born. File site turn 16 file 0. Cache card 1. The S. Eric's portrait sits between the names Matthew Leroy Hardy and Eric Gregory Johnson, showing that both identities belong to the same child. Caption: before FIM, there was a child with two names. Narration: the origin of FIM does not begin with money. It begins with a question: who was Matthew Leroy Hardy, and how did that child become Eric Gregory Johnson? Card 2. Two mothers made a secret plan. Visual: a young black pregnant woman and Ruth meet privately with infant clothing, a calendar, and a hidden plan, while both family systems remain outside the room. Caption: the adoption began before either family was allowed to know. Narration: about 6 months before I was born, my biological mother met Ruth. Together with Paul's help, they began making a plan they believed both families would try to stop. Card 3. Both families could stop the adoption. Visual: the biological family closes protectively around the expected child, while Ruth faces rejection from members of her affluent white family for choosing to adopt a black baby. Caption: one family would have kept Matthew. The other threatened to reject Ruth for choosing Eric. Narration: my biological mother believed her family would stop the adoption and take me. Ruth was warned that adopting a black baby could cost her the family she already had. Card 4. February 21st, 1984. Created 2 records. Visual: one infant rests inside a restrained 1984 hospital setting as the names Matthew Leroy Hardy and Eric Gregory Johnson split away from the same bassinet. Caption: the body was born once, the identity divided immediately. Narration: on February 21st, 1984, one child was born. What happened next created 2 separate histories around the same life. Card 5. Matthew was reported dead. Visual: a black grandmother receives a telephone call inside a home prepared for a new baby, while the words the family was told, Matthew had died, appear beside an evidence qualification. Caption: Matthew disappeared through a message. Narration: my grandmother remembered seeing me at the hospital and then receiving a call after she reached home. The family was told I had died. Card 6. One family prepared a funeral. Visual: biological relatives sit together beside unused baby clothing, a folded blanket, and a service envelope while the expected infant space remains empty. Caption: the report was false. The grief it created was real. Narration: my family had prepared for me. When they were told I had died, relatives said they paid for a service and mourned the child they believed they had lost. Card 7. The baby left the hospital as Eric. Visual: a covered infant carrier moves through a narrow hospital corridor from Matthew, reported dead, toward Eric, entering a new family with Ruth waiting ahead. Caption: Matthew vanished from one family while Eric was carried toward another. Narration: in my telling, the baby in the basket passed secretly into Ruth's hands. Matthew disappeared, and Eric emerged inside a different name and future. Card 8. Ruth carried the risk home. Ruth kneels beside infant Eric in the kitchen as they play with hand mixers near the open dishwasher, turning the secret adoption into ordinary domestic life. Caption: the secret became an ordinary life of kitchens, play, discipline, and care. Narration: whatever risks surrounded the adoption, Ruth became my mother through daily life. The secret decision turned into meals, play, discipline, and a home. The sisters received a brother. Visual: infant Eric sits between his 2 older white sisters on the patterned couch, creating the first visible family portrait of the hidden transfer. Caption: the hidden transfer became visible as a family. Narration: Ruth already had 2 daughters. In the photographs, I am simply their baby brother, one black child sitting inside a white family that had fought over whether I should be there. Hack card 10. Matthew Leroy remained under the new name. Visual: 16-year-old Eric discovers the name Matthew Leroy Hardy rising beneath the school, family, and legal identity of Eric Gregory Johnson. Caption: the name returned after the child had already grown inside another one. Narration: I was 16 when I discovered my biological name. Matthew Leroy Hardy had been hidden beneath Eric Johnson for my entire remembered life. Card 11. Eric Gregory became the surviving identity. Visual: the name Eric Gregory Johnson stands above the growing child with the symbolic ideas ruler, watchful, and alert, while Matthew's name remains visible underneath. Caption: The adopted name became the identity that survived into the world. Narration. My adopted name gave me another language: ruler, watchful, alert. I would later interpret both sets of names as instructions, but the people who named me could not have known what I would become. Card 12. Who was the child before Eric? Visual. The infant portrait stands between the biological family, Ruth, Paul, the sisters, the death report telephone, the covered carrier, and two overlapping shadows labeled Matthew and Eric. Caption: one family mourned Matthew. Another family carried Eric home. Narration. Before I could understand race, family, wealth, loss, or survival, my life had already been divided into two names. One family mourned Matthew. Another family carried Eric home.